Some things that I want to talk about today are the North Pole, Mount Meru, and the Black Sun, perhaps the projector for the sun and the moon. We're told the North Pole is a landmass with 4 rivers. 2 of the rivers flow inward, and 2 of the rivers flow outward. It was said that ships would get sucked in. Eventually, this landmass disappears slowly. We can see this in map making. And a little island not far called Friesland, depicted in Mercator's maps, also disappears. I think this goes back to the plasma sun we discussed in my last video. Plasma balls arcing along the wire. But in this case, the wire may lead to the North Pole. And this is where our research, especially dealing with boots on the ground, has limitations. We somehow need to get to the north, and we need to get to the south. Oftentimes heavily restricted, but anyway, I think this is the center of the realm, and perhaps the answer to a lot of our questions. I think the great floods, canyons, and the leftover grids we often explore are all signs left for us. In my last video, I discussed mosques being both demolished and refaced to look Chinese in China, the covering up of history. And I discovered a whole bunch of other examples of this, but I also received a comment stating you wouldn't see any demolished synagogues in China. And I had a little look, and sure enough, many synagogues have been destroyed, not only in China, but in Germany. And recently they found the ruins of one such place of worship, said to be destroyed by the man with a mustache. And only recently, in 2023, the ruins have been discovered in the river. Very interesting. And I did conclude that China has banned all religions, facilitating this destruction of both Muslim and Jewish heritage found in their country. Also found in China, at one point shared with the world and then buried again, are the mummified remains of a, dare I say, beautiful race of red-haired, fair-skinned people. Of course, the covering up of pyramids in China, as we've discussed in past videos. We also see the disassembling of the last remaining Chinese practitioners practicing in secrecy. I also want to discuss Mount Rushmore. I want to discuss their potential and what seems to me obvious alterations, in particular their clothing and hair, and compare their clothing and hair to their faces, and especially their eyes. And if I have time, I want to talk about the World's Fair and that passport that I always flash on the screen, and the notebook. I don't know what we'll get to, but I thank you for being here today. I love you all. God bless, and welcome. So I don't plan any of these videos. I just rely on inspiration and hope it shows up. Here I'm watching a Jared Boosters video that Larry Champion suggested I watch. I thought I watched it. Give him a thumbs up here. Here we can see early Mormon pioneers in Ogden. Same mountains in Utah. Run north to south, the Wasatch Range, and you recognize it right away. The minute you enter Utah, this range is your companion, and it would have been these people's misery. They would have had to cross through these mountains whichever way they came. And here they are. This is a sorry scene. Honestly, I question a lot of these photos. I think they may be staged and be a much later date. I mean, look how clean these wagons are. They just did some fresh laundry and reclothed their wooden wagons. Some fresh linens, even their clothing. I mean, come on. You guys just crossed the country. These tents, brand new tents, crisp white tents, unfolded this morning, it must be. This is all strange to me. And these are people that are about to build temples. Right away, we have about 4 or 5 beautiful temples. St. George, way down south. A team like this will have gone down there and built the St. George Temple in the 1800s. They would have taken their wagons and erected some tents before they started building. Serious builders, if we're to believe the story. There's one in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of these mountains, town called Manti, still a very small town. Temple over there, of course Salt Lake, so busy in Salt Lake. I mean, you could use these people in Salt Lake. They just arrive and they're just scattering hours away in a car, let alone horse and wagon. These wagons couldn't even travel through this terrain. Worthless. This ridiculous picture, especially this man. So here's a group of early Mormons, really an eclectic group. Clothing doesn't make much sense. This tent seems a little more weathered. I'm not sure why they have a safe out here. Looks like they just stole it. They're posing with it. Very proud of their safe. I don't know about these bags either. These don't look like old bags to me. What kind of luggage is this? And this man, what is he so upset about? I told you not to take my can of beans. I didn't take your damn beans. I got my own in this sports bag. I know you took my beans. Cut you up. Don't tempt him. He will cut you. I didn't take your damn beans. Gosh. I think he took those beans. So here in contrast, we see these men's great works, fueled by cans of pork and beans. From tents, horse and wagon, they began building this. The Salt Lake Temple, completed, or in their words, dedicated, you couldn't lie now, in 1893. It was the 6th temple completed at this point in 1893. And of course, they're building things like this, completed in 1894. This is just a few blocks away from the temple. These buildings seem to oppose each other. And here we can see a great picture that I've never seen before. And this is a great example, everything I'm talking about. Here we can see that glorious building, this one. Well, there she is in the background. And this little junk fest. I'm going to say this photo's in the 50s. Nonetheless, it proves my point that perhaps a not-so-old photo doesn't look too dissimilar from an old one. Here we see the same tents in the 1800s, just as cheap. Now we have stripes. We've moved on to stripes. In fact, these look very dirty compared to the early depictions we saw. Here, and of course here, and even here in 1869, downtown. I mean, again, the bulk of the settlers wouldn't even arrive until the mid-1850s, 1860s, and already we have a downtown of brick. Here we go, an old seasoned downtown. Managed to build a downtown, but left all these stones in the road. Really stony. I mean, nobody thought to clear the road. And look how old the tree is. Come on, 1869, this tree, generously 50 years old, realistically 100. Cheap signs, hand painted. I mean, it looks like their little carnival. Here's the origin of the carnival. Here's the connection. Little frilly tent awnings above the windows. Here we go. Just like the circus. Just like the early pioneers with their tents. So here the tent people are now making alterations to these buildings. And I don't blame them. They need a little shade. The weather may not be what it was before this inheritance, before the reset. The climate may have been much more moderate. Today, Utah is very harsh, reaching below freezing temperatures and as hot as the hottest parts of Death Valley at times. So anyway, the tent, and here we go. Let me know what you think. I'm going to place this in between the 40s and maybe as late as the 50s. Even if this isn't McDonald's as we know it today, we can still see how aged this building is back here. And I think that this city is one of the best examples for this theory that we discuss in this community week after week. And it could just be because I've lived in this city and in this state most of my life now. And even before I got into this research, I was very confused upon arriving to this city. Why was this city so beautiful, so European, and yet so new? One of the newest cities and states in the nation. And what I've come to realize is all states and countries and regions that are not yet countries looked like this. Here we can see a little tree growing in the road, maybe a 30-year-old tree. People have walked around it. And I could say so much more, but let's look at something else. Here somebody shared a comment with me talking about my last video where I showed the plasma balls, and it looks like Justin says, "You say the sun may not be on metal wires, but the Bible says the sun is on a circuit." He talks about Psalm 19:6, and I agree, it was exactly my point. But again, even the character we call Nikola Tesla had pushed wireless transmission, being the peak of harnessing and distributing power. But this wouldn't be allowed to prevail for the utility companies. Much more difficult to control. But no doubt, in this complex construct of a realm created, in my opinion, not some random elements coming together, same with ourselves, our bodies, our spirits, beyond anything that we can replicate. And with Tesla, we have this wireless energy being demonstrated. And I think when we realize things are not as we've been sold, we can look at Psalms and see that the clues may have been there all along. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. Of course, metaphors made for the people of the time, and there are many translations of the Bible. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. As I discussed in my last video, and many, living out here in nature, the stars become like a companion. Familiar faces every night. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. So essentially we could have magnetic points. We've heard that Mount Meru in the North Pole is a black magnetic rock, in the past called the Rubus Nigra, or Black Rock. And this is just one clue. Could we have 4 more magnetic rocks? The Bible tells us about the 4 pillars of the earth, and these 4 pillars could be one of several magnetic points in this machine, moving this sun and moon and all of the heavens along this magnetic circuit. Really fascinating. Psalms 19:6. One of the most perplexing things in this research for me is these outlying puzzle pieces, like this Mount Rushmore. I've discussed it so many times. This was built by a man and his son. I've made really in detail videos, and since I don't have to do that again, I can just talk about it. 1927 to 1941. So about 20 years, a little more, we're told. A man named Gutzon Borglum, like the Borg in Star Trek. Come on, really? This guy? Gutzon? So as if it's not stupid enough that a man and his son are said to have built this, it was built on land that was illegally taken from the Sioux in the 1870s. The land was already known as home of the 6 grandfathers. And what I've proposed is that something was already here, perhaps 6 statues, hence why the natives called it the 6 grandfathers. And what it looks like is parts of it have been covered with cement, such as here. It's very clear that cement has been applied over this original mountain, and it looks like a couple heads have been removed on this side of Lincoln and on this side of Washington. Here we can see Washington, and we can see the head to the left of him. It looks like a man with a beard and a wizard-like mustache. We can see his eye here, and I think they would tell us this was an accident and they removed it. This looks more like an old grandfather, and it looks like they're filling it in. There's some sort of hole here, and they've lowered a crane down to it, a perfect platform, and I think what they would do is ultimately fill that spot in, remove the head completely, and cover everything with this concrete, essentially. And here we can see a construction photo here as well, but there's just no comparison. It's like they're just working on the hair and the clothes. And to this day, the hair and the clothes are the worst part of this sculpture. Let's have a look again. Here we go. I mean, look at this hair, and especially the clothes. Either dropping the ball completely on the clothing, or that's all that they were doing. Now let's be realistic here, come on. Is the stone gonna have this lighter white color? Did they just get lucky here? No, they've applied this over the top. There's no carving this. And same with this down here. This has not been carved away. This has been applied over the top. And really, when you look at these heads, they have the finesse of old world sculptures, and everything else is just a mess. And I think that this is one of the best clues right here. I've never heard anybody besides myself bring this up. I think just like all of the photographic evidence of the past, there's been a lot of manipulation. This is a small rendering. You can see it's inside a little wooden cabin. And this is supposed to be the test. And you would think that the small test would look 10 times better than the massive final version, but that's not the case. This little mock-up shows that they did not have the abilities to do what we're seeing up on this mountain. That's all, clear as could be. Let me know your thoughts. I hope this video wasn't too random, but there's always next week. So thank you again. God bless. I love you all, and I'll see you soon.